And then after college, I was living in New York City, and that's when dating apps were really becoming popular. And it was no longer weird to meet a stranger from the internet. And my guy friends would say, oh, like I'm not getting any dates. And I would look at their dating app profiles and say, well, you're an awesome guy. I know you, but of course you're not getting dates. Your dating profile is awful. You look like a serial killer. Like,
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast. Today, we've got a special guest, Blaine Anderson, matchmaker and also expert dating coach. Blaine, we're real excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
We love your content. Got to know you on social and thought it would be great to have you on the show. Thanks a lot for coming. We really appreciate it. Talking with you before the show was super interesting, and I know our fans, our followers are going to love what you have to say and just find it really interesting. So Blaine is a well-known dating coach and matchmaker. She specializes in helping men improve their dating lives and build meaningful long-term relationships. She runs Dating by Blaine, a brand that includes coaching, online courses, matchmaking, and free online content aimed at guys. A couple months ago, Blaine launched a fun new podcast called Help Me, I'm Single, which I recommend you watch, by the way. It's hilarious, where she helps singles figure out how to improve their dating lives. And the clever idea is it's not just Blaine, but there's also a comedian in every show, and it rotates, right, Blaine?
Yeah, it's a different comedian co-host every episode. They bring the lightheartedness, their own expertise, their own failures. So it just makes it a little more entertaining and fun as opposed to just being the coaching aspect.
Yeah, that's great. We'll provide the links to all of Blaine's content in the show notes, so be sure to check it out and give her a follow if you don't. Even if you're not currently in the dating scene, and I'm not, it's fun, interesting, entertaining. It's great stuff. So she's coached thousands of men. She's been on Shark Tank before. Mark Cuban made an offer to buy part of your business, I believe. Is that right? And you're frequently featured in major media like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. Your social media is great. That's where initially I engaged with your content. I saw you actually on X, and I just thought it was a fresh approach and sort of not the usual dating stuff. So that's where I got interested and thought we should talk. So tell us, first of all, Blaine, how did you start with coaching? You didn't study this in college, right? This wasn't your major.
No, definitely wouldn't have predicted this would be my future career, yet here we are. It started actually rather organically. I've always liked talking about relationships and dating, even, rewind to the playground days. It was like, who has a crush on who? And then later, like, who's dating who? I want the tea. Like, where's this relationship going? And then in college, I would often have my guy friends ask me for advice on how to date my sorority sisters, and I'd, guide them there. And then after college, I was living in New York City, and that's when dating apps were really becoming popular, and it was no longer weird to meet a stranger from the internet. And my guy friends would say, oh, like I'm not getting any dates. And I would look at their dating app profiles and say, well, you're an awesome guy. I know you, but of course you're not getting dates. Your dating profile is awful. You look like a serial killer. Like your qualities aren't shining through. So I'd help them update their dating profiles, take some photos of them, and then, they would start getting more matches. So then they'd have, oh, how do I get her on the date? What should I do for the first date? So I would just give them advice. And I was working in the travel industry. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, obviously no one was traveling. So my work went to zero. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, suggested, you're always giving your friends advice on dating. What if you made a course out of it so you could reach more men at once? I was like, that's an interesting idea. So long story short, I rolled out my first course, my dating master class in 2020, sort of thinking like, okay, we'll see how this goes. Maybe this, will be something that's just like fun until people start traveling again. But it turned out people really needed it. It was really helpful. I got a lot of great feedback, and it snowballed from there. So I've worked, I think, with 7,000 guys through my courses and coaching since 2020. And then I started doing matchmaking a few years ago as well, and now do a lot of matchmaking and have a team of matchmakers as well. So it's been a really fun journey. I love what I do. I truly believe there's nothing better than finding somebody to share your life with. And so I love that I get to help both men and women. By helping men, I'm also helping women find their partners do that.
That's great. So why do you think there's such a high demand for this kind of guidance and your matchmaking service?
Yeah, well, I think dating is confusing. A lot has changed in the past few decades. If you look at the evolution of dating and relationships and procreation over human history, it was really pretty much the same for the last, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. You were introduced to someone or you met someone in your small village or in your small community. That was who you mated with. And, that was just it. That was your only options. Maybe it was someone from a neighboring community or a neighboring town. And in the past couple decades, which is a teeny tiny blip in the when you're looking at all of human history, we've changed so rapidly. Dating has become globalized. You're now expected to communicate in 150 characters through a smartphone on a screen. You're expected to market yourself with photos. What? It's obvious that people are struggling and they're confused, and this doesn't come naturally. So that's really why people need the coaching and the advice there. And then also because of that, because it is so confusing and it's global and people's expectations are changing and people are sick of actually like having to find somebody online. I think that's why the matchmaking business is booming, because it actually does get us somewhat closer back to what we're accustomed to. It's like a mutual person knows both parties and they're able to make an introduction accordingly.
It's almost a combination of old and new techniques. You have the technology, and then you're kind of bringing the human element back, which is super useful, because it used to be your buddy or your sister or your mom would connect you to somebody, or you'd meet somebody in college at a fraternity party. And that became, my first wife. It was a girl I met at gym with one of my fraternity brothers at the university gym. That's not how it is anymore. People get married later in life and they're adrift looking for answers. And I think you're filling a huge need. There's a gap there that needs help. Rahul, why don't you pick up the next part of the discussion?
Yeah, no, it's I was going to say, because even I'm 38 and I've been married 10 years. And so the dating apps came out after, I was in a serious relationship. So it would be completely foreign to someone like me if I had to get back into that world. So,
and that's a lot of who I see in both coaching and matchmaking. It's someone who's divorced, whether they're in their 30s or in their 50s, and they haven't been single for a long time. And they're just like, whoa, so much has changed. I want a jump start on what I need to know.
Right. So why men? I know you specialize, like you said, in helping men. Why men? How did you select men?
It was just who I naturally started helping with their dating app profiles and giving advice to. Not to say that women don't have challenges dating. There's actually way more women dating coaches. There's more coaches for women out there than there are for men. Women are more likely to ask for help. Women are more likely to spend money on themselves. So I think I picked the harder sex to actually, from a business perspective, to get to. But it just sort of like was organically who I was helping. And then from a business perspective of like, okay, marketing, who do I want to go after? Who do I want to target? It just made sense to double down on one of the sexes.
That makes sense. So suppose someone reaches out to you. Do you have criteria for certain men, or can someone just look you up and hire you? Or do you have certain expectations?
Yeah, so my courses are available to everybody. You can reach out and buy those. They're self-serve courses pretty much. They do include some question and answer sessions and a one-on-one profile makeover depending on the course, but I would say pretty much anyone can buy those. As for matchmaking, we are super, super selective about who we work with. It is a high touch luxury service. It is a high price point, so many people can't afford it because it is very labor intensive and operationally intensive and takes a lot of time for me and my team. But we're also very intentional because we're trying to create amazing and lasting connections for our clients. We're not here to help a guy hook up with a bunch of different women. So I want to make sure that his intentions are pure. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm trying to get married tomorrow. Some of our guys are recently divorced and they just want to go on dates with high quality women. That's totally acceptable. But we want to make sure that you're a good guy. You're going to treat women respectfully. You have things going for you. You also are able to get second dates and women are into you. It doesn't mean every woman has to be into you, but if you really struggle to get a second date and like every first date you go on, the woman doesn't want a second date, then matchmaking isn't what you need. You need coaching. You need to figure out how to market yourself and how to show up better on dates, because you don't want to pay me to just get turned down by higher quality women.
Right. And so you offer coaching too, you said, right?
Yeah. And some of my matchmaking clients do coaching and matchmaking together.
when we were talking about this before the show, you made this really interesting comparison between product and marketing that I thought was really apropos. And for a lot of our clients, they're business people and they understand this concept. Could you explain that more? I thought that was really insightful.
Yeah. Well, if you follow me on social media or you look at my website, I talk a lot about how dating can be a marketing problem. You're just not marketing yourself authentically and correctly so women can see all of the things you bring to the table. That said, sometimes there is a product problem component. If you are at a dead-end job and you don't have friends and family that you're close with and you don't have interesting hobbies that you care about and you enjoy, that's going to be unattractive to a woman. So you need to first focus on upgrading the product so you feel really good about who you are and what you bring to the table. And a woman is going to be excited about that. Then we can work on how you market yourself. So a lot of the guys I work with do come to me and they have a great job that they like and they have friends and they have interests outside of work that they're passionate about. And it truly is like, okay, we just need to get you communicating about yourself and marketing yourself on dates. But sometimes there is also opportunity to upgrade the product a little bit before we start focusing on how it's marketed.
That makes sense. So, what are the top 2 or 3 patterns you see in men who don't get second dates? How do you coach them out of those habits?
One of the most common things I see with men who aren't getting second dates is they are not confident enough to ask for what they want. They are worried about being creepy. They're worried about, making a woman feel uncomfortable. And here's the thing. The guys who are worried about those things, worried about being creepy, worried about making a woman uncomfortable, aren't the problem. They aren't the men making women uncomfortable because they're self-aware and they're usually too far in the other category where they aren't making a move. They aren't acting with intent. They aren't going after what they want. So the woman doesn't feel that desire from the guy and therefore there's no spark or chemistry.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense.
It's the guys who are just blindly moving forth and thinking every woman's going to be interested in them and being overly touchy or making sexual jokes. So there's the guys making women uncomfortable, and those aren't usually my clients.
So is there a way to sort of reprogram these guys to sort of be more intentional about the romantic aspect or less creepy? I mean, you have probably clients on both buckets there.
Yeah, I would say most of my clients don't fall into the creepy bucket. Most of them fall into the playing it too safe bucket. And, there's a lot, everyone's different. Depending on where they land on that spectrum, there's a lot of different work that can be done in support of that. First, it's just being confident in who you are and what you bring to the table. That's first and foremost. And that, comes kind of down to the product side of things. But then also just little things like how you plan the date. Are you optimizing a date for someplace where you can sit next to each other, where you can insert some physical touch, where you can escalate things appropriately? That's going to help you out and be advantageous to you versus like, oh, we're sitting across from each other in the daylight and there's no way for me to touch her. That's going to feel more like a business meeting.
It's interesting. So what about tips for guys who recently divorced when they go on that first date? Are there some do's and don'ts, a few you can think of? I think of a couple, but I'm not a professional matchmaker and coach.
Yeah, I'm curious what yours are. I would definitely say don't talk about your divorce. I feel like sometimes even they'll be like, oh no, she was divorced too. We talked about it. We really bonded over it. And it's like, that's not what you want to be bonding over.
Right.
That's like trauma bonding. You want to be bonding over the future and things that you both enjoy in your life, not like why you both hate your ex or like how much you spent in your divorce, how your custody shook out. That's not sexy to conversation. Smart guys fall into this habit too. They talk too much about their work because it's easy to talk about. And maybe the woman, it's interesting. The woman's engaged. She's asking questions. But whether you're talking about divorce or work, that's not creating a sexy environment. It's not creating an emotional pull to the other person, even if it's easy to talk about.
Huge. I think that's absolutely huge because guys are so desperate, I think, to impress. It's like you're talking too much. You're not asking enough about the other person. And you're not making them talk about themselves and showing you have interest in them.
That's another good tip is 70-30. I always tell my guys, aim to keep her talking 70% of the time.
That's great. I've not heard that.
Yeah, you don't want it to obviously feel like an interview where you're just bouncing questions off of her, but that's another topic. But try and just keep her talking about herself. Yes, share details about yourself, add on. And great conversations usually end up being roughly more 50-50. But I think if you're aiming for 70-30, you're in a good spot.
That's great. Rahul, why don't you ask about the next couple of things we had?
You went back to this fixing the guy's profile on their social media apps. So what are some red flags that you typically see when someone first comes to you, completely blank slate, and they show you their Hinge or Bumble
Other
profile?
than the guy wearing the Star Wars cosplay in the in the profile photos.
So the most common error I just see is bad photos. So it's like the guy just was struggling to find 6 photos of himself. And like that's what makes up the profile is the 6 photos, as opposed to intentionally picking photos where he looks good, where it showcases his hobbies, his interests, things he likes spending time doing. It's just like, okay, I had to find 6 photos of myself. And that's, I feel like, how most guys approach their dating app profile. And the reality is, for men, if you don't have an exceptional dating app profile, you're not going to get matches. You're not going to get dates. That's not true for women. Women can have like a crap profile and they'll still get dates. Not true for men. So it's just a huge waste of time and energy and a tank to your confidence to try an online date without really putting in the effort for your profile. I have an online course called Online Dating Operating System that is just about how to create a good profile. So if you do have guys out there listening, you're divorced or not, and you want to create your, well, not if you're married, but maybe not divorced yet, and you want to create a great dating app profile, that's definitely a good place to start. It's an inexpensive course and it'll give you the foundation you need.
I think there's a big need for that. We talk about the dating apps all the time, and the stats are startling that you pointed out. We said like the women swipe right on 10% of guys, and guys swipe on like 50% of the female profiles. The odds are not in the guy's favor. So your point is well taken. It's worth the investment to put your best foot forward. If it's funny is if a guy's selling a car online, he's going to take a bunch of nice pictures of the car, but for themselves, they just have a bunch of bad pictures with a buddy or something from their phone and post it.
I always recommend hiring a professional photographer, and people are like, what? That's so weird. That's so crazy. That's cringe. But no, the right photographer, we're not talking LinkedIn headshots of you in a studio with like a forest backdrop. The right photographer will get lifestyle shots of you that it's not even obvious they're professional. It's like, oh, this is just a high quality photo.
Right.
And an iPhone is also, by the way, perfectly sufficient for getting a high quality enough photo. The problem is most guys just don't have a good sense of angles and lighting and positioning. So that's why I recommend hiring a pro and then just using like 2 of those professional photos within your app mixed in with other candid shots that you got on your own.
Once they get matched, they can still screw it up because their messaging is not on point, right? I mean, they can completely just derail themselves because they're doing something wrong, they're being creepy or coming off as creepy. So, you always hear about this is the best first message to send or this is the worst first message. So what does a good first message look like? Is it just sort of hi, as some people say, or do you have to have like a line, or what do you say?
You can't say hi, you can't say what's up, you can't say how was your weekend, because that's what every other guy is saying. Remember, this woman has hundreds, if not thousands of matches. So how are you going to stand out? What can you say that's funny, that's going to make her smile, that's going to make you stand out so that she actually reads the message, looks at your profile, and then hopefully gets the date? This is also why I also have a texting course, texting operating system, that walks guys through everything from the first message, whether you met in person or online, to securing a relationship, texting once you're even dating somebody.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about this?
Yeah.
Dudes using too many emojis.
Yeah, don't do it. One well-placed emoji here and there is okay, but not more than 1 per message, and even like that would probably be too much. Like 1 per every few messages.
Here's another one. Multiple replies. Like the guy says blah blah blah, then the lady doesn't answer immediately, and then he posts another thing and another thing. That's also a no.
Double text.
Right. That's a don't. Right.
Yeah, for the most part, there's obviously exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, yeah, no double, triple texting.
That echoes something my dad told me when I was in high school. I would call girls all the time on the phone. This is how old I am, because we had a telephone with a wire, and I'd be talking to these girls, and he'd say, I said, why aren't they don't want to date me? What's going on? Why he's like, you're smothering them with your affections. You're chasing too hard, right? And you're freaking them out. And I said, oh, okay. So, but I want to call him and tell him how much I like him. He's like, don't do that. You gotta wait. Even if it makes you crazy, you gotta wait. And so days and days would go by. And then I'd get a call, and it works. So same thing in texting. If you look too hungry, you freak people out.
You want to look like you have options, not like you're desperate, especially when you don't even know somebody very well. If you're smothering them with messages and like, oh, pick me, like I want to see you. It's like, why? You don't even know her yet. So she's going to pick up on that energy. Everyone wants somebody who's desirable, and it's a fundamental human trait. You want somebody that other people also want. If no one else wants you, like, why do I want you?
That's a great point.
It's like I see that you're online because there's like that green dot next to your name, but you haven't responded to me. What's going on,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah,
mean,
back in the AIM days.
Yeah. I see her online. What's happening? Or the three dots and then no message comes. Like, what's happening? So yeah, here's one. How do guys pick a good place to ask women to meet for the first date? And can you talk about your concept of, there were two types of first dates we talked about, and I think that's really interesting. Can you first talk about date 0 versus date 1 and explain? And then also, where do you go for these places?
In terms of date 0 and date 1, if you met a woman online, I like to think of that as date 0. This is just let's meet in person, check the vibes, and see if we want to go on a proper date, like a sit down dinner. That doesn't mean don't put thought and effort into date 0. Pick a fun spot, pick a place you like, someplace that there's going to be things to talk about in a nice environment, someplace that feels, fun and lighthearted and maybe a little sexy with low lighting, but you don't want it to last. You don't want the commitment to be more than an hour at the maximum, because you're really just seeing like, okay, do we vibe here? And then if you do, then plan a more involved second date. Sit down for a meal, do an activity together. But you really don't know the person, especially if you met online. If you were introduced by a matchmaker, by a mutual friend who's vouching for both parties, or you already met in person so you know there's some vibe, okay, you can skip day 0 and go straight to date 1.
Okay.
So that's how I view it. And then in terms of like what makes a good first date, when we're talking about date 1, I, have talked to thousands and thousands of women for matchmaking. I have thousands and thousands of women who have filled out my matchmaking intake. I have a multiple choice question. Which do you prefer for a first date? Drinks or dinner, or a walk and a coffee? It is almost 50-50
Interesting.
for what women prefer. So what does that tell us? It tells women, it depends on probably the context in which the woman is meeting the guy. Like, was it an intro? Did she meet him online? And it says that women's taste varies. So you need to think about who you're meeting, what her preferences are. And if you don't know, you can always give that option.
Okay.
What I will say about coffee and walk is if you're the type of guy who struggles to make romantic connection and you consistently hear, you're a really nice guy, but I just didn't feel the chemistry I'm looking for, then a coffee and walk is playing in hard mode, because that doesn't facilitate a sexy environment. It doesn't facilitate chemistry. Especially if you're in broad daylight, you're sitting in a cafe. It's very different than like a bar. I'm not saying you even have to have alcohol. You could have a mocktail, or it could be,
Sure.
Someplace like a food truck area that has like, string lights, but it's nighttime and you can sit next to each other, and that's an easier environment to put your hand on her knee, to put your hand on her hand while you're talking, to get that chemistry and that vibe spark ignited. So think about what plays to your strengths and best interests, and to what she's going to enjoy based on what you know about her.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't think people think enough about the setting like you're mentioning. And if they think about it like the set for a movie scene, if it's going to be a romantic thing, is it going to be something super loud with tons of people around, or is it going to be a little quieter where you can actually hear yourself think? It's a little lighter, like you said, lower light. Everybody looks good.
You want to be able to talk to each other. That's another thing. Like a movie, a comedy show, a concert, not good first or even, frankly, second dates, because you want to talk. You want to get to know each other. That's the whole point.
That makes a lot of sense. Two more questions on that tie in. One is, should the guy pick up the check?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Done.
Easy.
Easy. Okay. Next is, on your show, there was a great a clip that came out on social where the question was, the guy talked about taking leftovers after like an expensive dinner. Is that a don't?
Because someone said don't do it at all on your first date.
Yeah,
Lauren
Compton, who's a good
That's
friend
right.
of mine and comedian, was on the show, and she was like, absolutely not. You cannot take leftovers on a first date. It is an ick.
Right.
And people were up in arms about, they're like, that's BS. Like, that's not like a signal of anything. Listen, I tend to agree with her, because when I teach and what I preach to men, it's not always like what I think is fair or what I think makes sense. It's what's going to get you the best results most often. And there are women out there who can't even articulate why, but are going to think taking the leftovers on a first date is an ick. So if you want to optimize for not giving her the ick, don't take the leftovers.
Right. It's like we tell people in our business, we're the weatherman. We don't make the weather. It's kind of like, I'm sorry, this is the way it is, but this is the way it is.
Yeah, I don't make the rules. I'm just here to explain them to you. So take it or leave it. Take your leftovers if you want, but don't come crying to me when the woman doesn't want a second date.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's weird about it too is you're carrying something, and now where are you going with that? Like now you have the smelly food in the bag, and
it's just not sexy. Have you ever seen in a movie a guy like carrying leftovers afterwards and then giving the woman a kiss? Like, no, unless they're like portraying like a dorky, awkward guy, like he's not taking the leftovers.
So we're saying Brad Pitt has never carried leftovers in a movie. More than likely, if we searched, we could ask AI and find out. Probably never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us about funny demands of your clients. Have you had any like oddball demands people make and like they have a list of things they want?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I've heard it all. I get a lot of very specific physical criteria. Once also sometimes non-physical things, and some are like totally reasonable. Like, hey, I want a woman who's comfortable staying home with our children. That's a values thing. But sometimes guys get really prescriptive where it seems like they think they're ordering a pizza, and it's like, okay, I want her to have brown hair, C cup, lift weights, Christian, and a member of the choir. And it's like, okay, you realize I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not just like mixing a potion back here and like, ta-da! It's like this woman has to exist and be single and want to date you. So, part of my job as a matchmaker is hearing what clients want and then delivering on it. But I really encourage them to, rather than having prescriptive, like, okay, she has to have gone to an Ivy League school, think about what that represents. Okay, maybe it's because you want a woman who's smart. What does that mean to you? Okay, I want a woman who can have intellectual conversations about current events. Okay, let's look for that. Let's look for a woman who watches the news, who can speak to current events, because like whether or not she went to an Ivy League school doesn't necessarily mean she can have like the end goal or the end point that you're looking for. So I try and get clients to open up the more rigid criteria, or at the very least think about like what they're trying to optimize for by having that criteria, so then I can find someone who matches it. Because what I have found is some of the best matches happen on the borders of your criteria or on the periphery of what you are asking for. Because what actually makes a good long-term partner isn't whether or not they match your checklist. It's, whether or not there's good long-term compatibility, whether or not you have shared values, whether or not you share a vision for the future.
Huge. And
you both are opted into that.
We've actually talked about that before, and I've talked about that in my social. We talk about obviously marriage and divorce, and I don't believe there's one perfect person for somebody. There are many good matches for people out there. Mm-hmm. This thing, when you mentioned on the periphery or on the fringe of your criteria, as long as it's 70%, and they're willing to work with you, you're not going to be their perfect person either. But if you can grow together and make it work, then you're doing great. You're doing better than most people.
I have a question for you guys. What do you think, as divorce lawyers, seeing people go through divorce, what would you say, okay, make sure you're aligned on this, or make sure you optimize this when picking a partner to avoid divorce?
What do you think, Rahul?
So I would say it would be an almost sort of an introspection into what went wrong the first time.
But what if they haven't been divorced before?
So to avoid divorce. Okay, so then I would say, what are your absolute criteria for this is a deal breaker for me? If that's the case, don't say, well, I really like her. I love her about all these. I love so many different things about her, but this one deal breaker she's not on. For example, let's say, she's the perfect person, but you want kids and she doesn't want kids, for example. You know what? Maybe she'll want kids down the road. I'm going to get married to her, because I can't find a better person than this. Maybe I'll convince her. And then over time, you can't convince her. And then there's this resentment, and then which is going to start spiraling everything. So if you have a few non-starters, listen to those non-starters. And I think that's probably my one big tip.
Do you see that often in divorce law? Like, okay, I knew she didn't want this, or I knew he didn't want this. We had this deal breaker, but I ignored it, and that's why we're here.
Occasionally, I would say. A lot of times, also, just as cliche as it might be to say, I think, and the Rafe, you can also support this. I mean, it's sort of people just fall out of love after some point. They sort of just they've been married 10 years. We talk about the 7-year itch that people get after being married 7 years, but it's sort of like sometimes they just don't want to get along anymore. They just don't get along. They sort of start going on their divergent paths. So you see a lot of a mixed bag. It's not always just a deal breaker thing.
I think, Blaine, what you said about shared values is huge, because if your values aren't largely aligned, you are playing on hard mode. Opposites attract, but they repel eventually. That's one thing.
Yeah, I say birds of a feather flock together is a lot more true than opposites attract when it comes to successful relationships.
Yeah, if opposites attract is fun for a date or hanging out because it brings excitement into your life for a while, but it rubs you raw eventually. And we represent a lot of successful business people, and a lot of times you see this kind of person is an engineer type, is a thinker, is a doer, alpha kind of person.
Those are my guys, yeah.
Yeah, and they marry the artistic, creative, color, I would say color, music, love, because that's something they know they lack, so they seek that.
Sort of the eat, pray, love sort of a person, right?
Yeah, and that person eventually kind of drives them nuts. That's like a level of emotion that long-term wears them out. I think then they'll say like, what's her background? Well, she was an art major in college and I was a business major, and you're like, okay, or she was in theater, right? And they get together and eventually they drive each other nuts. He's too rigid because he's like this, and it's all about work. And she's into all this creativity and all these things.
That's so interesting because I hear that all the time. I see it both ways with my matchmaking clients. I definitely see like, okay, I'm really business focused. I'm very busy at work. I really want someone who has more flexibility, who is more free spirited, who has like the things that I don't have, to bring that out of me and to bring that to the relationship. And then I also see guys who are like, I'm this way, so I want a partner who is also this way. But I feel like I actually see more of the former.
It may be more like, I'm this way, I'm this business guy, and I need somebody who can tolerate that. Because what happens with the other person is they get sick of it. They think, I'm going to change this guy and we're going to go on a lot of vacations and we're going to have a lot of free time. And this guy's just chugging away, stacking up coins, and they're at odds. And he doesn't have time for a family. He's busy working, and that's just the way this guy is. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's something that I think is very common, is this. I've said before, times change, people don't. I think they're fundamentally, we're the same with relationships. And people will say, well, so-and-so changed. Well, when you really ask questions about what happened, no, they just got sick of being bothered about the way they are versus the way the other person is. It wore them out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like you kind of have to have the balance. If you're total polar opposites, that's going to be really tough, to all of the points you just made. But then I do feel like there's something to be said about balance. Like my husband and I, he's way more of the engineering brain, way more analytical, way more numbers guy. We joke that he's the CFO and I'm the CEO.
Right.
Where it's like, I'm the visionary. I like more like lead the vibe of the family. Like I, like figure out where we're going on vacation and what we're having for dinner.
Sure.
And like, obviously I work and I'm very passionate about it, but we definitely bring different strengths to the relationship. Like if there's a contract or something to be negotiated, that's him. But if we like are doing an upgrade to the house or like a renovation project, like I'm doing that.
Yeah, right. Well, those are real complementary
pieces.
You found a good place there. And my wife and I are very much like that.
Same here.
I got divorced and remarried, and I tell people I like marriage so much. I've done it twice. I'm the pro-marriage divorce lawyer, but we get along very well too. And yes, we rub each other the wrong way sometimes, but we're aligned on most of our values, which makes life easier for sure. And it feels like cooperating rather than battling. And when we do have disagreements, I think there's a couple important things. One is fight fair. Don't yell at each other. Listen. Like let the other person say their thing, accept their feelings, and expect the same treatment from the other person. And then I always say date night. You're at the beginning of people's arc, which is critical, but never stop dating your wife.
That's why I think, I have a lot of followers and I'll like talk to people. It's like, I'm married. I love your content. And it's like, good, because like you should still be dating your wife 40 years later. If you're not, you're going to have a problem.
So a lot of people also mail it in, right? After a certain few
Yeah,
years.
it's easy. It's just they get in a
yeah.
routine. Another thing
Mhm.
that we didn't actually talk about this previously, but it might be interesting to your audience because I hear it a lot is because you work with successful guys too. They're worried whether they've been married before or not. Oh, I don't want a woman who just wants me for my money. I don't want a gold digger. How do I avoid that? And something I say is, first of all, give yourself more credit. Like if that's something you're aware of, like you're hopefully not going to be blind to a woman who is just dating you for your money. Like, do you have good conversations? Are you staying up to talk to each other? Like, do you enjoy each other's company? But then also, I don't actually think it's inappropriate that a woman is attracted to a guy who is financially independent and successful because those are provider qualities. First of all, if she's thinking about having children with you, she needs to know that, like, okay, she's stepping away from her career and
Yes.
she's doing a very hard job. Like, can you provide for her and the family? But then also, just the fact that you've been successful and made it also shows that you know how to persevere, that you know how to get shit done. And those qualities are also attractive, not in the financial sense, but just in the life sense.
That's right. Also, gentlemen, you can always get a prenup. So, but it's might not be the most romantic thing she's heard about when you ask for it.
I actually have clients all the time put that as their criteria. Like, she has to be okay signing a prenup. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to bring that up when I talk to her. Like, before your first date, that's going to be a bridge you cross later.
That might need to be
Yes.
down the road several dates later.
Yeah.
That's like
Lock them down and then
we talked about, Rahul and I've talked about this more than once. We're like, gentlemen, don't talk about the nerdy hobbies like your trains or whatever, your lightsaber collection. That's several dates down the road once she finds
She
you
has to
fast.
like you first.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about your interesting hobby. So,
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Same for the prenup. Until it's relevant,
yeah.
it's not an appropriate conversation. I don't know if this has legality to it. I've heard of people springing a prenup. Like, they're already engaged, the wedding is planned,
Oh, yeah.
and then one of the people is like, by the way, here's the prenup, like, you have to sign it. Is that like, would that be thrown out in court or is that legit?
Depends on the circumstances. If it's very, very last minute, the other person doesn't have a lawyer, and there's a lot of what they call undue duress, it'd have to be really outrageous. Then it might be a problem.
Like for example, next week you're getting married this weekend. Let's say it's Thursday. This weekend you're getting married and you got the prenup yesterday saying you got to sign this. All your family's flying in. Everything is paid for. Everyone is there. The food's ready to go. What are you going to do? Just cancel the wedding and tell your 200, 300 guests to leave? I mean, not show up. So that's duress, I think.
Well, the question is undue. Like, is it unreasonable? And that's a fact. It's not a sure thing. So that's an example, but it has to be pretty extreme for a court to throw it out.
I know somebody who that happened to. The dad of the bride sprung it on the guy like week of the wedding and the bride didn't know either that her dad was going to do it. And he was like, sign it or like, we're not moving forward with the wedding. He was paying for it.
Which is why we tell people to talk about it way in advance. Like, even better is like around the time you're getting engaged, you need to have that serious conversation.
Before you're engaged, probably.
Yeah, talk about it.
Probably a good idea.
Because you'll find out you're going to have this real serious values conversation. It's going to drive this big value conversation, and it could kill the relationship. Well, better to know that then than after the dress is bought and people bought tickets to Tuscany or where they're going for the destination wedding, like you're pointing out. And it's we have a rule: we won't take a prenup sooner than 30 days to the wedding because it's just a bad idea. It was like I call it malpractice in a box.
It's not setting up for success.
No, the person's mind is not on a legal document. They're all in wedding land, and it's got to be earlier, and the earlier the better. Yeah, for sure.
So what happened to this friend? Did they actually do it, or did they just say no?
He signed.
He
It was
signed,
true
okay.
love.
I frankly think it was like probably a good move on the dad's part.
Well, yeah.
But like not an appropriate way to hand it over. And do people ever retroactively make a prenup? Like, I'm married, for example. Like, what if my husband and I were like, hey, we're not planning on getting divorced, like, but now we've accumulated more assets. Like, should we have a prenup?
All the time, yeah. And so it's called a postnup, and essentially you do what you do in a prenup. It's got some slight legal nuances that's different than a prenup, but for the most part, yes, people do that a lot.
We have
Interesting.
We'll have cases where there's a problem in the marriage, a lack of trust, or maybe a major financial change, and people start feeling concerned about it, and they want some certainty. So they work out a postnuptial agreement. What's interesting is a prenup really just deals with what happens if you get divorced and nothing else. A postnup really is two parts. One is, what do we do financially while we're still married? So maybe you're going to have X assets. I'm going to have Y assets. Blaine's future income just goes to Blaine. My income goes to me if I'm your husband. And then we work out how our expenses are paid while we're married. Part two is, if we get divorced, here's what we're going to do. So you can kind of create a controlled landing, plus figure out what you're doing during the marriage going forward, which can give people a real sense of confidence and control if there's been some major shift in the relationship or major financial change.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like there would have to be a major shift to feel like that was necessary. Otherwise, it kind of just feels like an expensive lawyer bill.
Yeah, right. Typically, you see something significant happen, or there might be infidelity in the relationship, and the one spouse who is less financially advantaged says, well, I'll stay with you, but I need a postnup to make sure I'm getting X, Y, and Z, and I'm not, I have to be protected.
Screwing myself if I continue to be a stay-at-home mom.
Exactly. Good example. So to wrap up our time today, tell us, is there like a funny or weird story that comes to mind about like the craziest thing you've heard in this business? You've been doing this for a while now.
Oh my God. Okay, I don't know if this is the craziest, but it's top of mind because it literally, a matchmaker on my team just told me this yesterday. They talk to a lot of women. There are women, like we're constantly talking to women, like essentially going on dates with them before our clients do.
Can I ask you, because I forgot to ask, how do you meet these women? Because obviously you need to source them, so to speak. Where do you find ladies for this?
All sorts of different ways, through personal and professional connections, through going to events and places in real life, through online, like any way that you would meet another human is how we meet these women. My team of matchmakers is constantly just on the lookout. Also, any women listening, hit me up. I go on women focused podcasts as well, and I'll get a ton of DMs. Like if you DM me, I'll send you my intake form so you can just be in our database in case we find somebody for you. But anyway, so one of the matchmakers on my team was talking to a woman who was in our database. She was essentially getting to know her to see if she could be a fit for one of our clients. And this woman at the top of the call told my matchmaker, I identify as a cat. And my matchmaker was like, wait, she's like, you have a cat? She's like, no, I am a cat. I identify as a cat.
Okay.
And my matchmaker was like, am I being punked? Like, what is going on? And throughout the call, as they're chatting, because the matchmaker was like, okay, I guess I'll just see what's going on with, take the call. And throughout the call, she would talk and say, yeah, I really enjoy, going to the beach on the weekends. Meow.
Oh, wow. Come on.
And would just meow throughout the call.
Oh my gosh.
And then at the end of the call, she rang a little bell and said, okay, so nice to meet you. Ding, 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 bye. Like a kitty bell.
Well, just when you think you've heard it all, folks, there's one for you.
I was truly like, no, that didn't happen. And Ashley, my matchmaker, was like, I swear, I can't, I have no idea what that was about. And she was actually like, yeah, it happened a couple weeks ago. I've just been so busy. I was like, how did you not tell me this? This is crazy.
Any of you Tomcat dudes out there, you may contact Blaine.
We've got a girl for you.
She has the perfect lady for you if you're into that.
Her hobbies are playing with a ball of yarn, right?
Oh, well, there's somebody for everybody. That's what my mom told me when I was a kid. There's someone for everyone.
There truly is. There is. And the internet makes it possible to find that person. I always say that too. No matter what your freaky quirk is, whatever your niche interest, there's a ton of other people out there who share it. And the internet is a large and weird place that allows you to find them.
You can find whatever niche you're looking for sure. Well, thank you so much, Blaine, for being on the show. We appreciate it. How can people best reach you?
Yeah, datingbyblaine.com, across all social media, Dating by Blaine. So super easy to find me. Check out my podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Help me, I'm single. And yeah, it was really fun talking to you guys, and thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Thanks so much for being on the show. Good luck with the show and everything else you're doing. You're helping the guys out there and the ladies of the world, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
All right. That was awesome. So, Rahul, how was that for you, bro?
I thought that was great. I think she's awesome, wonderful. And I think anyone out there who's in the market, ladies or gentlemen, definitely reach out to her and see if you can meet the criteria to use her. Yeah, I mean, if you're a woman, this is great because she's putting you in the pool and vetting guys for you. These are high-end dudes that can afford this service. So if you're a lady looking for quality matches,
reach out to Dating by Blaine. Blaine doesn't cost you a dime. And she's making sure that she doesn't want the women to be unhappy either, because that's her business. That's literally, if she makes the women upset, her business is in trouble. So that's good for you. For guys, I recommend her products in these courses. You can start inexpensively with these things. If you've been out of the dating pool for a long time, the world has changed radically. Rahul's a better example than me. I've been out of the dating pool for very long time.
Actually, I don't know, Raif. Well, I mean, I was married in 2015.
Oh, okay, so I was married in 2018. So I guess I'm more recent than you. But still, 10 years or whatever it's been, 10 plus, 12 years, been a long time.
It's one of those where also you get the perspective of a lady to sort of, or a woman to sort of explain to you, to guys, because guys get in their own box. And if you have a male matchmaker, for example, who sets you up, you want someone to tell you what you're doing wrong and to challenge you if you are, in fact, if it's a product issue, right? So I think it's great. And, being out of the game for so long, it'll be very, like you said, 10 years, 8 years, whatever the case might be, 7 years. It's certainly something that can't hurt. And you'll probably find good success. If you can't find success there, I'm not sure how else you'll find success unless, it's sort of the, kismet.
So there was an interesting post I saw on social about this issue. Somebody was saying, who would pay for a matchmaker? I think it was something Blaine was actually engaging with. I follow her on X. And somebody said, like, it's a waste of money, or why would you do that? Something like that. And I replied because I thought it was worth saying, because I think this plays into a lot of things. And I said, why would you hire a lawyer? Why would you hire somebody to fix your car? Why would you, these are all things you can do. The point was, this person was saying, well, you can and should do this stuff yourself. Why would you spend money on someone to help you with this stuff? Well, because people hire coaches all the time. You can go work out by yourself too.
Yeah, you're good. You don't need someone to tell you what lifts you should do, how many reps you got to do, or what weight you should lift. I mean, no.
People hire coaches all the time for fitness. They hire coaches for divorce, for business. And so that's the investment you're making, is in holding yourself accountable and then also helping you improve. And we can all use that kind of assistance. So sure, you don't have to spend the money, save your money, but when not everybody wants or needs the service. But to attack it wholesale is just unrealistic, because it kind of says, well, then theoretically all coaching is a waste of time and money, and it's not true. So Rahul, we're doing this live stream, but do we do some news stories, or do we close out the show?
What do you say? I mean, I feel like the way it's sort of, maybe we should just have this as a standalone episode.
Yeah, probably.
With Blaine.
For you folks live out
about
there,
an hour long.
We had some news stories, but we can push these to next week without a problem.
Yeah.
So with that said, Rahul, how can people find you online?
You can find me at Chicago Divorce and also on LinkedIn with my name.
So thank you. This show is sponsored by STG Divorce Law. STG Divorce Law helps smart, successful people get divorced in Chicagoland since 1994. We've got 10 lawyers, and we are dedicated to helping smart, successful people get divorced better. Please contact us at stglawfirm.com. That's stglawfirm.com. And of course, I'm the author of the book, I Just Want This Done: How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids, Money, and Minds. Available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and where all great ebooks are sold. That's where the title of the show came from. And my next book, I Just Want to Know, is coming out, which helps people decide whether to stay married or get divorced. And that's more news on that as it's ready to come out. So thanks very much, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please give us feedback, like, share, subscribe. That way we know you love the show, and we want to move up in those podcast rankings and get above those boring divorce lawyer podcasts where we talk about alimony for an hour and drive everybody crazy. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Take it easy.